She sat in a bustling downtown corner where the brilliant neon lights never fade all night, gazing absently at the passing people. Flashy makeup, Alyssa, 15 years old. She doesn't look like she's in middle schooler, the only daughter of my boss. It happened a few days ago. I was invited to a bar after work by my direct supervisor, John. John and I attended the same university, and he was exactly a generation older than me, 38. Leo, I feel bad bringing this up for personal reasons, but actually, I have a favor to ask you. Oh really? What do you need? As I leaned in, John said, I'm getting a divorce. John married his age mate when he was 23. It was a shotgun wedding. They were happily married in their 20s. However, entering their 30s, disputes between the couple, mainly revolving around their only daughter Alyssa, increased. John is rather permissive. On the other hand, his wife tended to micromanage even the small stuff. For example, John said, Alyssa was in 3rd or 4th grade. His wife realized they were running out of mayonnaise while making potato salad. So, she sent Alyssa to the local supermarket. She explained in detail to Alyssa about the brand, product name, weight, and where it was located on the shelves. However, what Alyssa brought back was different from what her mother had specified. Even if they wanted to exchange it, Alyssa had lost the receipt somewhere. His wife scolded her harshly, and Alyssa began to sob. When John heard about this, he said, It's just mayonnaise. Any brand will do. There's not much difference. Then, his wife snapped at John. What are you talking about? This one uses only egg yolk, and this one uses whole eggs. They are completely different. Before John could argue, his wife's anger was again directed at Alyssa. I explained so much. Firstly, she generally doesn't listen to people properly. Her attention is scattered, and she lacks focus. It's not just about our daughter. Everything is like this. Being with her feels suffocating, so to speak. John said with a sigh. Gradually, conversations between John and his wife decreased, leading to them meeting and sleeping separately. And about 6 months ago, talk of divorce came up. Neither had any objections to the divorce. My wife has already left the house and started a new life with her parents. So, the problem is, it was about Alyssa's custody. They were arguing over who would have custody during the divorce negotiations. Under the law in America, when divorcing, it's necessary to decide the custodian, either the father or the mother. She is clinging to Alyssa's custody as if it were a lifeline. According to John, his wife is declaring that she wouldn't hesitate to bring it to court mediation instead of a settlement. So, what do you need me to do? I asked. I need your help with my daughter, Alyssa. John, with his eyes reddening as if he was about to cry, said to me. So, here I am, in the sparkling neon night of downtown, with a photo of Alyssa given to me by John. The photo was taken secretly by John, who was worried about Alyssa going out late every night recently. Flashy makeup, clothes that boldly revealed her skin. She looked mature in the photo, but seeing Alyssa in person was strikingly more alluring. I approached her as she was sitting in a corner of the downtown area. Hey, you, could you, She raised her head to look at me. Her eyes were filled with distaste. I'm not into that sort of thing. She spat out the words and walked away from me. John's request to me was to stop Alyssa from, well, roaming around or hanging out every night. Alyssa's behavior started to change after John's wife left home. She continued going to middle school but quit her tutoring classes on her own. She would lock herself in her room at home and didn't talk to John. They hardly saw each other. And she would go to the downtown area night after night, not coming home until 11 or 12. John was genuinely worried about his daughter, Alyssa. And another concern was the impact of Alyssa's misconduct, if it continues, on the custody battle during the divorce. In divorce mediation, decisions about custody are made by evaluating which parent has more love, financial stability, and caregiving ability. Currently, his wife lives in her parents' house and has a full-time job. There is no financial issue, and her parents are there to look after Alyssa when her mother is at work. On the other hand, John has no financial problem, but if Alyssa continues to reject him and stays out late, his caregiving ability will be questioned, putting him at a considerable disadvantage. John was also losing his confidence as a father. I think it's futile for me to talk to her directly. I think she won't listen, but I also can't force her. Thus, he asked me, who has a middle school teaching certificate and tutored students during college, to persuade Alyssa. The time limit was 1 month until the next divorce consultation. Since then, I've been visiting the downtown area every night after work, trying to make contact with Alyssa. Thinking that revealing I was asked by her father would be counterproductive, I hid my real identity from Alyssa. She was often with girls her age, so it was hard to find the right timing to approach her. So, I started by letting her recognize my face, pretending to be hanging around a little far from where she could see and occasionally glancing at her. Even so, this is risky. She doesn't look like a middle schooler at all. If I had met her in this town by accident without knowing she was Alyssa, I accidentally swallowed my saliva and shook my head to dispel the improper thoughts. In hindsight, I seemed suspicious to Alyssa and the other girls. That night, too, as I was loitering across the street, a girl with high-tone colored, medium-cut hair blocked my way. She looked about 18 or 19. "What's your business with that girl?" Her voice was unexpectedly intimidating. Seeing me flustered, she said, "You don't look like a patrol officer, so, do you have any business with her?" I said no and ran away. I decided to withdraw that night and reported to John. John, sounding downhearted, said, "I see, I'm sorry." Then, as if he thought of something, "Alyssa loves strawberry-flavored things, whether it's chocolate, ice cream, or cake." He suggested using strawberry sweets to start the conversation. It was the 14th day since I started visiting the downtown area where Alyssa hangs out. Finally, the chance came. That night, I went straight there from my office. Alyssa was alone. The girl with the high-tone medium cut wasn't there either. I hastily bought 2 strawberry-flavored cream puffs at a nearby convenience store and ran to where she was. "Do you want this?" Alyssa glared at me. I held out the cream puff to her. Alyssa's eyes brightened for a moment. Then, turning her face half away, she snatched the cream puff from my hand and took a silent bite. I sat down next to her. "Why do you come here every evening?" I asked, and took a bite of my cream puff, too. "What about you?" "Me, I'm just killing time." Alyssa glanced at me sideways and continued to eat her cream puff. "I don't think it's good." As I started to say that, she swiftly stood up. "Thanks for the treat," she said, about to turn her back to me. "Aren't your father worried about you?" Alyssa turned around and looked straight at me. "That's what this is about." "What do you mean?" Alyssa pointed near the left side of my chest. I came straight from work, so I was still in my suit. On the left collar of that suit, where she pointed, a company badge was shining. "You work at the same company. My parents sent you to watch over me." I quickly grabbed her arm. Then, I told her about how John, as her father, was worried about her, and how if things continued this way, there might be a chance they can't live together. "Your father believes you won't listen to him. That's why he sought my help," with tears in his eyes. She shook off my hand and disappeared into the city crowd. I trailed her and searched around for a while. When I returned to the original spot, she was nowhere to be found. So, it was you. I turned around to that voice. It was the high-toned woman I mentioned earlier. You seem persistent, but whatever. If you are looking for Ailey, she is with me. What is Alyssa saying? When I asked, clinging on, the high-toned Rachel replied with an exasperated face. Everyone has their own issues. That's all there is to it. I don't know anything else. That's irresponsible. When I said that, she snorted. But I have promised to send Ailey home before the last train, so I will ensure she gets home by then. Rachel said that and jerked her chin, urging me to leave. I called John. I reported that my true identity had been revealed, leaving John disappointed. The next day, I had lunch with John and talked in detail about what happened the previous night. Alyssa had returned home, right? John nodded weakly. Then he said, I guess I have no choice but to give up. Still, half a month. We have half a month left. Then, more than 10 days passed. Alyssa spent her time on the streets of the downtown area until the last train, and all I could do was watch her from across the street, day after day. And then, we had only 2 days left until the deadline. When I visited our usual place, other girls were there, but only Alyssa was missing. Even after waiting for a while, she didn't show up. I approached the girls, whose faces had become familiar, to ask about Alyssa's whereabouts. Excuse me, where is Alyssa tonight? When I asked, the girls looked at each other and laughed mockingly at me. Eventually, one of the girls said to me, if you're looking for Ailey, she headed to the park just before Tom arrived. I thanked them and took a step towards the park but then stopped. Is Tom referring to me? Yeah, you see, we used to have a fat cat next door who would always watch our house from the top of the fence just like you. That fat cat's name was Tom. Sent off by the girls' laughter, I went to the nearby park as told. There, a clearly ill-intentioned man in his 20s was hassling Alyssa. Hey, what are you doing? I rushed over, and Alyssa clung to me from behind. I pushed Alyssa behind me and got us out of there. What's your problem? The guy approached me, his eyes blazing with anger. Then, he grabbed my collar as I backed away. I'm not proud of it, but I'm not confident in my strength. The man raised his fist. I pushed the man with all my might and turned to escape. But I twisted my ankle and fell on my butt. What's the matter? You were acting all cool just now. The man grabbed my collar again. At that moment I thought I was going to get hit. He let go of me. And then, he ran off as fast as he could. I turned my head to the opposite direction from where the man ran. Then, led by Rachel, the girls who call me Tom and some shady-looking guys I've seen in the downtown area were running towards me. What happened to you? Alyssa had gone to call for help, and in no time, Rachel had gathered acquaintances from downtown to come to our aid. Hey, Ailey, Rachel called Alyssa and ordered a cab to take us home together. I suggested going to John's house, but she wouldn't hear of it. Eventually, Alyssa came to my room. Do you have any band-aids or something? When we got to my room, Alyssa asked. When I said no, she dashed out to a convenience store. While Alyssa was out, I called John. At your place, tonight. Yes. The last train's already left. If she stays over, we can talk about various things. John seemed a bit bewildered. By the way, she hasn't gotten into stuff like that, has she? I, feeling agitated, asked what he was referring to. I mean, booze and cigarettes. If my daughter has dabbled. Oh, that doesn't seem like it. I wondered why I was flustered. What did he mean by that? I was confused myself. Soon after ending the call with John, Alyssa came back home. Excitedly, she had a convenience store bag in one hand. "Here, I bought them. First off, I'm a bit hungry, so this. A strawberry-flavored cream puff. The same one I bought her before. Plus, potato chips. Some chicken. For drinks, strawberry milk for her and canned coffee for me." Finally, she took out the poultice. I almost forgot to buy the poultice. I couldn't help but chuckle, remembering the mayo buying mistake John mentioned. Eventually, without my asking, Alyssa shared her thoughts and feelings. She was shocked to find out her parents were getting a divorce. But there was nothing she could do about it. She just wanted to escape from that reality. So, to distract herself, she went out to that bustling town, almost like she was cosplaying. She researched divorce on her own, too. After all, Dad and Mom just want custody, don't they? Those were heavy words. Indeed, I thought it might be the parent's ego, wanting to become the custodial parent. And again, when brought to divorce mediation, if there's a minor over 15 between the spouses, a confirmation of the child's wishes, directly, as to which parent they prefer, is always conducted. It was terrible. Both Dad and Mom had their flaws, but the things I loved about them were much more, for both. And then to be told, choose because we are getting divorced. It's impossible. Alyssa screamed her pent-up feelings and jumped into my arms crying. The next morning, John came to pick her up in his car. After putting Alyssa in the car, John asked me secretly if we had talked. I nodded. And I asserted, "But whether it's to you, or your wife, or the court, or anyone else, it's secret, what I heard from Alyssa. At the very least, I thought I should not disclose which parent she would choose until she decides herself. If I don't do so, I feel like I would be betraying her, who had confided in me things she had been bottling up inside." Alyssa stopped going to the bustling town from that day. John and his wife's divorce discussions broke down, and mediation was indeed initiated. When the court investigator asked Alyssa about her preference, she chose her father, John. The mediator respected her wish and awarded custody to John. His wife reluctantly accepted this, and the divorce was finalized. Later, she contacted me and told me why she chose John. "Because Mom has both grandparents, and first and foremost, she's reliable. In contrast, Dad is hopeless when he's alone." Alyssa and I kept in touch for a long time. We met in person a few times a year. Close, but not too close. That's how our relationship was for about 7 years. I was 33, and Alyssa was 22. "What's this serious talk about?" As soon as we sat down at the pub, John said. "It's been a while since I drank with John since I moved apartments. I was the one who invited him. It had been a long time since I came to this city at night. The busy district that 15-year-old Alyssa used to visit night after night. Alyssa chose and booked this place. Actually, Alyssa will be here soon." John, looking surprised, opened his eyes wide. Suddenly, a large mug of beer was rudely placed on the table. "Hey, we haven't ordered yet," I told the young waitress who brought the beer. Then, that waitress acted as if it was just a courtesy and paid no attention. "Actually, I have been dating Alyssa." I only said it bluntly and gulped down the courtesy beer. John also sipped his beer, still in shock. "Judging from Dad's reaction, you've already told him," Alyssa arrived and said as she sat next to me. Then, the same waitress came and placed a strawberry cooler in front of Alyssa as a courtesy. She just stood there without moving. "Hey, Ailey, shouldn't we have ordered before discussing?" I looked closely at the face of the waitress who said that. "This is that Rachel." While I was surprised, Rachel winked at me. I nodded and beckoned and whispered a few words to Rachel, who came closer. "Since when, you guys?" I explained to John how even after it was decided that he would be the guardian of 15-year-old Alyssa, we kept in touch. And I confessed my feelings to Alyssa recently, and she accepted. Because he was always there for me when I was in pain, struggling, sad, and also when I was happy. John said he understands, with tears in his eyes. "Have you already told your mom?" Alyssa replied, "Not yet." Even after John officially divorced, Alyssa and her mother met whenever they wanted to. Of course, even after she became an adult. John strongly grasped my hand, placed on the table, with both his hands. "Will I be called Dad by Leo, who's only a generation younger? Shall we try, maybe now?" As John and I smiled at each other, not Dad, but suddenly, a granddad. John and I were stunned by Alyssa's words. "Hey, come on, both of you. I'm just kidding. It's obviously a joke." The three of us burst into laughter. "Can we serve the food now?" I had them wait as requested. John said, "All right, let's eat, let's drink," and patted my shoulder several times. I exchanged a relieved glance with Alyssa beside me. Downstairs, "That's incredible, isn't it?" Hearing her say this, she and I both looked down. She then, with a worried expression, murmured, "Is it safe?" I understood her worry, so I tightly held her hand, hoping to give her some comfort. I realized there was no need to hold back my overwhelming emotions anymore. "It's going to be okay." When I assured her of this, she joyfully hugged me. I tenderly hugged her back. It took quite a long time before I could hold her in my arms like this. Feeling the love transmitted skin to skin, I knew this was the moment I had been longing for. My name is Mike. I was born into a typical family, living with my mom and dad. I was a shy and quiet child, but I entered my rebellious phase around middle school. I wished I could have been just a cheeky one, but unfortunately, it was rather severe. My quiet dad and I spoke even less, and my relationship with my mom became strained. Whenever I opened my mouth, I would spew abusive words at my mom and sometimes just continue to ignore her. I skipped school without permission and had unauthorized sleepovers at friends' houses. But my mom would scold me at times and patiently listen to me at other times. We occasionally had verbal fights, but she never once rejected who I was as a person. Looking back, she really was a wonderful mom. One day, I was wandering around the nighttime city streets, following a delinquent senior. My mom, who had been looking for me, found me there. Mom and Dad apparently searched for me until midnight since I didn't come home. Honestly, I was a bit moved that my mom would do anything for me. But it was embarrassing to have my seniors know my mom was looking for me, and it was embarrassing to show my emotions to my mom. So, that day, I shook off my mom's attempts to take me home and ran away. In the end, I didn't return home but stayed at the senior's house. However, the next day, I deeply regretted it. When I woke up at the senior's house, I saw numerous missed calls on my cell phone. There were dozens of calls from my dad. With a bad feeling, I reluctantly called my dad back. Despite the many calls, my dad was calm. "You know the general hospital near home, right? Come here. No need to rush. Your mom's waiting, but take your time," he said. But his voice was clearly strained, and contrary to his words, I rushed to the hospital after hearing I didn't need to. I hurriedly caught a taxi and rushed to the hospital. My mom was sleeping, covered with a white cloth. It seemed she was hit by a drunk driver on her way back from looking for me. If I had come back with her, if she didn't have to go looking for me, if I hadn't acted out so foolishly. I blamed myself and withdrew from the world. Tears wouldn't come out. I simply closed the curtains, spending the day gazing into the pitch-black space. At that time, I was supposed to be preparing for high school entrance exams, but I didn't take them. My kind dad silently watched over me, daily placing food he struggled to cook in front of my room. Despite losing someone important, he never blamed me, the cause of it, even once. I didn't know how to respond to his kindness. After realizing the magnitude of my actions and their irrevocability, the feeling of despair grew day by day. One day, the president of the food production company where my mom worked visited. My mom, it seemed, worked as an executive assistant at the company dealing mainly with condiments. I knew she worked at a food production company, but I never thought she would be bustling about as an executive assistant. The president spoke of my mom's work ethic outside my room. He would come around every other day to share fond memories of my mom, despite his busy schedule. About a week into this routine, he said, "Your mom used to say she was proud of you." I had been quietly listening until then, but at his words, I involuntarily dashed out of my room to confront him. "That can't be true. I am just a childish brat who skips school and rebels against parents and teachers. Proud of me. That must be your consolation. There's no way my mom thought that. She must have been disgusted by me. Don't fabricate things." To my outburst, the president just smiled. "It's true. Your mom had difficulty having children. She wanted to experience all the facets of parenthood, to hold her child, travel together, have parent-child arguments, be called old lady during rebellious phases." Behind the president, my dad was nodding, his eyes brimming with tears. I was at a loss for words. Wanting to be called old lady and to have arguments. When I asked, "Is it okay if I go through a rebellious phase?" your mom said, "Rebellious phase is just expressing oneself to the parents, right? Experiencing the assertions of a child is something only a mom can truly understand and face directly. Of course, the good times are important, but I also want to experience those troublesome times. Experiencing that is a parent's privilege." I was recalling my mom. She was talking about you just a bit before the accident occurred, mentioning you are in full-blown rebellion phase. But experiencing such things makes me feel that he has grown. My son lets me experience various things as a mom. He truly is a son to be proud of. That's what your mom said, with a smile on her face. For the first time, I understood my mom's deep love for me, and I couldn't stop my tears. I crouched, weeping, comforted by the president in front of my room. My dad was also there, watching over me. From that day, I stopped being a recluse. Knowing my mom's thoughts made me want to face forward. Invited by the president, I started working at a subcontractor factory of his food production company. He told me I could aim to take high school exams while working or pursue something else I might find. He provided a place for me until I could find my dream. But still, without a dream at that time, I devoted myself to the job at hand. Everyone in the factory, including the president, knew my circumstances, and they were strict but kind. Since I didn't take the high school exams, everyone took turns helping me study during breaks. In the workplace with many older people, I met a girl of my age. Her name was Hannah. Hannah, 2 years my senior, also didn't finish high school. Coming from a poor family, she gave up her education to work so her younger brother could study. Despite being only 2 years apart, Hannah worked so hard. Even though her circumstances were far from ideal, Hannah always remained cheerful and positive, never showing any sign of bitterness or defiance. She often lifted my spirits. 3 years after starting to work in the factory, Hannah made a proposal to me. "I'm not great at studying, but you, Mike, you pick things up so fast, don't you? Why don't you try taking the high school equivalency exam? I'm sure it'll benefit you in the future." Encouraged by the words of Hannah and by the people at the factory who taught me, I took the high school equivalency exam. And I passed it with flying colors. When I showed the passing notice to Hannah, She beamed with joy. I guess that's what people mean when they say someone has a blooming smile. At that moment, I realized I had feelings for Hannah. I was promoted to a full-time employee when I turned 20. And by the time I was 23, I was called to the main office. Hannah and I were still in touch, but our relationship didn't progress. It seemed like Hannah saw me as a family member or a younger brother, so I didn't have the courage to confess my feelings to her. She started attending night high school after successfully sending her brother to college. Actually, having at least a high school diploma was a condition for becoming a full-time employee in this company. Hannah aimed to become a full-time employee after obtaining her high school diploma. When I was to move to the main office, she was more delighted by my promotion than I was. Amazing. Keep it up. I'll do my best too. Hannah, who always supports people straightforwardly, seemed indeed a wonderful woman. I then accumulated achievements in the sales department of the main office and served as a section chief. Hannah retired when she got married at 27. It was shocking, but it was my fault for not having the courage to tell my feelings. Hannah didn't have a wedding, so I never met her husband, but she seemed very happy. Seeing her smile, blessing her, was the only option for me. After turning 30, it was decided that I would be transferred as the head to the HR department, a department with only highly educated people. This transfer, where a young punk like me would go to a department full of highly educated people, was unprecedented. I was taken in by the president, and I had been doing my best to handle the tasks at hand. I had always wanted to live a life that wouldn't shame my mom. I managed to get here with the help of the people around me. I had nothing but gratitude for everyone who had supported me up until now. Finally, my first day as a department head arrived. However, I was suddenly made aware of the unhealthy mindset of this department. I was asked by the section chief of the new department about which university I graduated from. Since it wasn't something to hide, I honestly said I dropped out of junior high. Before I could tell him that I had obtained my high school equivalency after joining the company, he immediately started looking down on me. Junior high dropout, are you sure you're in the right place? Everyone here is highly educated. I don't need a junior high dropout as my subordinate. Please, leave. It seems that he thought I was another employee who was transferred on the same day. I was pissed off at the section chief's disdainful attitude. The people at the factory and Hannah, who saved me, may not have been highly educated, but they were all wonderful people. Feeling looked down upon because of lower education felt like those people were also being looked down upon. I don't need a subordinate who discriminates based on educational background either. Huck, subordinate. The perplexed section chief and I faced each other. I've been assigned here from today. I only had a middle school diploma when I joined the company, but with everyone's support, I earned my high school diploma. I've proven my capabilities, and here, I will be the department head, so I'll be your superior. The color drained from the section chief's face, and he apologized in a faint voice. However, actually, judging people by their educational background wasn't unique to this section chief. In this human recourse department, known for collecting highly educated individuals, many shared a discriminatory view based on educational background, like the section chief. The president himself appointed me as the head of this department, probably for that reason. It seems the president has always wanted to put an end to the discriminatory view based on educational backgrounds within the company. So, even though I joined with only a middle school diploma, he appointed me, having proven my worth, as the new head of the HR department. I want a workplace where capable individuals are recognized, regardless of their educational background, the president told me. From then on, I proceeded with reforms under the president's instructions. Scouting talent for the HR department, irrespective of their educational background, was also part of it. I would identify potential candidates and the president would interview them, and if they had the president's approval, they were welcomed into the HR department. My reunion with Hannah was during one such talent search. I found Hannah, who was supposed to have resigned to get married, in another department. When I heard about an excellent employee, I checked the employee list and found out it was Hannah. Hannah and I met at a cafe after work to talk. It turns out, Hannah had divorced her husband and returned to the company. Apparently, her husband's bad drinking habits were the reason for the divorce. I could have supported you if you had told me, I said, to which Hannah smiled weakly. I wanted to tell you, Mike, but I didn't want to worry you. Hannah, who spoke so, didn't have her usual brightness or smile. I could feel how painful her marriage had been, and it saddened me. I told Hannah that I want to support her from now on, and she should consult me about anything. I believe Hannah is the talent needed to change the current HR department, but whether to welcome Hannah to the HR department or not was up to the president. As a result of the interview with the president, recognizing Hannah's abilities and humanity, it was decided she would join the HR department. Initially, Hannah, who, like me, only had a high school diploma, was not readily accepted by the others. However, with her diligent work and steadily accumulated achievements, others gradually began to open up to her. We, together, laid a good foundation for a workplace unrelated to educational backgrounds. Hannah seemed to regain her spirits, seemingly well suited for the job in the HR department. Watching her regain her sparkle, I, too, found my long-sealed feelings for Hannah rekindled. By this time, Hannah and I had started meeting privately as well. We lived near each other, so it was just casual dinners or me giving her rides home after work. We weren't dating. But one day, an incident occurred. It was a day off, late at night, when I received an urgent call from Hannah. Help me. I rushed to Hannah's house to find a man banging on her apartment door, calling out her name. I called the police and had the man taken away and protected Hannah. After the police restrained the man, Hannah came out of the house, trembling with fear, and clung to me. My heart raced as I stayed by Hannah's side while she spoke with the police officer. Since it was already late at night, we decided to talk more about it the next day. I urged Hannah, who was still scared, inside the house. And I adhered to Hannah's wish to stay with her since she was scared. Unexpectedly, due to the incident, I was spending the first night with my beautiful colleague I had feelings for. I was a bit nervous. Hannah began to speak, seeming apologetic. I'm sorry for dragging you into this. I should have called the police directly. I ended up calling you impulsively. I hurriedly assured her it was no problem. I'm glad you relied on me. I wanted to be there for you if you ever needed help. We then heard voices from the entrance of the apartment. Looks like onlookers are still around since the police came earlier. Downstairs, that's incredible, isn't it? Hearing her say this, she and I both looked down. She then, with a worried expression, murmured, "Is it safe?" I understood her worry, so I tightly held her hand, hoping to give her some comfort. I strongly felt I wanted to protect her. I realized that there was no longer any need to restrain my overflowing affection for her. It's okay, I'm here. When I assured her of this, she joyfully hugged me. I tenderly hugged her back. Finally, I told my feelings to her that I had harbored for so many years. It took quite a long time before I could hold her in my arms like this. Feeling the love transmitted skin to skin, I knew this was the moment I had been longing for. This is how we started dating. My relationship with Hannah progressed smoothly, and I proposed to her on her 33rd birthday. She nodded, with the same radiant smile as when we first met. For our marriage greetings, Hannah and I went to meet the president and the factory workers. Everyone genuinely congratulated us on our marriage. The The section chief, who used to look down on me due to my educational background, has become a good partner at work, and I thanked him again. Thanks to being underestimated by you, we could build an organization unrelated to educational background, and I could reunite with Hannah. The section chief gave a wry smile to my words. Please stop. That's my dark past. I've changed my heart. I will never look down on people because of their education again. I couldn't help but laugh at his words. The section chief agreed to give a speech at our wedding. At the wedding, I want to express my gratitude to my parents who raised me, the president who took me in, the factory workers who watched over my studies, and my current colleagues. Me standing at 6 feet 3 inches and her at 4 feet 11 inches. That was the memory of the first night I visited her place. Our height difference has sure caused its share of challenges. She looked up at me, clearly frustrated, and said, "This just won't do." Whispering that, she climbed onto me. My name's Benjamin, a 26-year-old single office worker. After college, I got a job at the only company that gave me an offer. I know I'm an introvert and a bit gloomy by nature. The company probably made a mistake hiring someone like me for sales. A job in sales is the last thing I'm suited for. But I'd like to think I gave it my best shot. No matter how hard I tried, the gap between my peers and me was evident. I just couldn't meet the sales targets, and the end and beginning of every month were torture. I could sense that my peers and colleagues looked down on me and made fun of me behind my back. I wondered if there was something, anything, I could be good at, so I kept one habit from the day I joined. I would come into the office earlier than anyone and clean my desk. Since it's the main office building, there are janitors who come in early. I would focus on the small areas and places on the desk, places only I would notice. By keeping up with this routine, I somehow managed to boost my self-confidence. "Well, Benjamin, you are early again this morning." The most senior janitor, a sweet old lady, approaches me. Over the mornings we'd see each other, I'd grown quite close to the janitors. "Good morning. It's pretty chilly today, isn't it?" Our usual morning greeting and a bit of chit-chat. Every now and then, they would ask for my help to move things from high places. One of the few things I've got going for me is my height. Both my mom and dad were tall folks. I currently stand at 6 feet 4 inches. So, moving things placed high up is pretty easy for me. As I chat with the older lady, one janitor after another drops by to say hello. They're also kind, making me feel more at ease than when I'm with my co-workers. "Good morning, Benjamin," a soft voice greets. The greeting comes from a young part-time janitor named Sarah. Sarah was a part-timer in the janitorial department of the company. She's not a full-time staff, started working here this spring. I believe she's about 4 feet 11 inches tall, but she always tries her hardest to look up at me when she talks. I became close to her around the time she started in spring. There had been a little incident back then. The janitors don't just clean in the mornings, they keep various places within the building tidy throughout the day. That day, Sarah was on her first ever midday shift. She was primarily an early morning worker, so this was her first daytime shift, and she seemed quite overwhelmed with the differences. During the early morning shifts, she rarely encounters any staff other than me. During the day, in the hallway full with employees bustling around in suits, Sarah was approached by one of my peers named Mike. Sarah, well, she's more than just a little cute. I'm not exaggerating, she genuinely is. The first time I saw her, I was so taken aback by her beauty that I completely forgot to greet her. She has porcelain-like fair skin and her face is characterized by large eyes with light pigmentation. I guess Mike too was captivated by her appearance. "Excuse me, I'm working right now," She seemed to be persistently asked for her contact info, answering in a soft voice while looking down. She seemed to shrink, making her already petite frame appear even smaller. "You're just a part-timer, and you're defying a staff member. You're just in cleaning. It's not a big deal to share your contact." Sarah seemed cornered and on the verge of tears in the corner of the hallway. Mike, who always has an intimidating demeanor even towards our peers, seemed relentless in pressuring her. "Mike, just leave her alone. Can't you see she's scared?" I gripped Mike's shoulder and intervened. When Mike turned to face me, he was momentarily taken aback by my height. Probably in the entire office, only a few could look down at the fairly tall Mike like I could. Upon realizing it was me, Mike smirked dismissively. "Oh, it's you. Sarah, you can go back to your work. You've still got a lot of work remaining, right?" At my words, Sarah nodded and muttered "excuse me," and bowed her head. She then swiftly disappeared down the hallway. Mike clicked his tongue in annoyance, watching her go. "Mind your own business. She's none of your concern. Just because she's new doesn't mean you should tease her like that. It's not fair." I guess Mike didn't like the fact that I, who usually doesn't talk back, was objecting. Mike shot me a glare. From that day on, Mike and I were like oil and water. Mike might have been a disagreeable guy, but there was one aspect of him I had to respect. That was his sales record. He always boasted top sales. A feat that's something I could never do, even if I tried my hardest. Not to brag, but I'm known for being diligent and thorough in my work. Yet my sales numbers never improve. I'm often told that I'm a likable person, but that doesn't necessarily translate to sales. The end and start of every month is truly tough. Walking into work at the beginning of the month, I feel a pit in my stomach. I sighed deeply as I flipped the calendar page in the office, dreading another month ahead. "Huh? Benjamin," your sighs can be heard all the way out in the hallway. From the office door, Sarah peeked in, smiling. It seemed she was just cleaning the hallway. She smiled, probably trying to cheer me up. "Why does the first of every month have to roll around? It's kind of a downer." In a playful tone, I responded, and she let out a bubbly laugh. I couldn't help but laugh too. It felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders, even if just a little. Sarah once confided in me that she was quite shy and found it hard to get along with anyone at work other than me. Even now, she probably dug deep for the courage to get that laugh out of me. Knowing that I couldn't be down in the dumps. She's pushing herself out of her comfort zone. I felt that I should step up too, otherwise, I might let her down. Normally, I'd keep my head down during our monthly morning meetings. But today, I held my head up with confidence, probably thanks to Sarah. Her presence started to have a growing impact on my life. Then one day, as I was about to head out for an outdoor assignment, I overheard a familiar voice coming from behind the office building. It was Mike's voice. He said he was heading out for some field sales calls. I didn't really want to run into him, so I tried to avoid going his direction, but I stopped for a moment. Between the sound of Mike's voice, I heard a faint voice. It was Sarah's voice. She was saying, "Please stop," in a soft voice. I quickly dashed towards where the voice came from. There, Sarah, looking like she was about to cry, was being held by her thin arm by Mike. "You're still young but already stuck in such a bottom-tier job. Has your life already hit rock bottom? Why not date me? It'd be like hitting the jackpot. Isn't that what you're aiming for?" Mike kept hurling such incredibly derogatory remarks at Sarah, laughing it off. The appalling nature of his words made my blood boils. I forcefully placed myself between them, shielding Sarah behind me. "Ach, it's you again, Benjamin." Mike glared at me, clicking his tongue. I spread my arms wide, hiding Sarah from Mike's view. "Just stop it, man. You're obviously bothering her." As Mike and I argued, some of our colleagues gathered around. Most of them were on Mike's side. It felt like I was on the away team. But I couldn't back down. "Don't pick on her for no reason," Mike mocked me with a sneer. Similarly, the colleagues surrounding me laughed. It was frustrating, but there was nothing I could do. I had to grit my teeth and bear it. Don't act all high and mighty just because you're in front of a girl. You've got the worst sales record this month, right? A guy who doesn't earn much is surely not her type. Huh? Mike ridiculed me, laughing it off. The colleagues just followed Mike's lead. Unable to respond, I bit my lip. The person who came to my rescue was quite unexpected. "Hey, it's cowardly to gang up on one person like that. Haven't you grown up yet to realize that?" An elderly woman, the most senior janitor among us, scolded Mike and his gang, raising an eyebrow. The force and momentum of her words made Mike and his group take a step back. There's certainly something about the aura of the elderly. Moreover, there's a rumor that this lady is quite close to the CEO. Given she's been here for quite some time, that rumor probably holds some truth. Mike must have remembered that rumor. "Whatever, old lady." With those dismissive words, he hastily left. "Thank you so much. You saved me. I was of no help at all," I said, scratching my head. The elderly lady firmly shook her head. "It's the intention to help that's truly admirable." Hearing those kind words, I felt a bit embarrassed. I'm not used to receiving compliments. The only person who ever praised me was my late mom, I believe. "Benjamin, thank you so much. I always seem to be in need of help. Please allow me to repay you sometime," Sarah said with a whispering voice while facing down, probably still in embarrassment. I could see her slender neck turning bright red. I felt like I'd caught a glimpse of something I shouldn't have and my heart raced. Feeling embarrassed, I was at a loss for words, so I just nodded repeatedly. A few days later, trouble arose. I'm pretty sure it was all because of Mike's misplaced resentment. One morning, there was an uproar over missing important documents. People were saying they'd been thrown away as trash. Mike was cursing loudly, shouting, "Call the janitors." The boss got wind of the commotion and summoned all the janitorial staff. They stood in a line, and Mike, acting all high and mighty, started trying to pinpoint the culprit. Even our manager seemed to be under Mike's thumb. Honestly, the manager should have put a stop to this kind of public shaming. But he didn't. Mike, with a malicious smirk, pointed at the head janitor, an older woman. "It was you, wasn't it? I know you're in charge of the trash in this department. Do you have a grudge against me? How are you going to take responsibility for this?" He yelled at her, biting his teeth in anger. The janitor just glared back at him silently. I'm pretty sure Mike intentionally placed the documents where they'd be mistaken for trash. I quietly asked a colleague nearby what document had gone missing. His answer puzzled me. Because it was a document that shouldn't be missing. The janitors wouldn't touch those documents, right? They're kept in a locked cabinet after all. I raised my hand and began to speak up. If it was mistakenly thrown away, it's Mike's fault for not securing it, not the janitor's. I tried to explain this. Hearing my words, the manager seemed to realize the truth and quickly used his key to open the cabinet. We weren't allowed to touch that key. It's in the second drawer from the top, fifth file from the left. Having a good memory was my only strong point. My sales performance wasn't great, but I probably knew more about the goings-on in the office than anyone else present. Mike glared at me and muttered, "Mind your own business." The document was found exactly where I'd said, and everyone breathed a sigh of relief. The only person with a sour face was Mike. He returned to his desk without apologizing to the janitors. I tried to follow him to make him apologize but was stopped by the head janitor. "It's okay, Benjamin. Thank you, you've been a great help." When she told me this, I stopped in my tracks. Seeing her forcing a smile with a hint of sadness made me feel like crying. "Don't be silly. You don't need to cry. You're really a sweet person." Truth be told, I should have been the one comforting the older lady who was hurt, but instead, she was the one comforting me. It was embarrassing. As I escorted her to the hallway, I noticed the CEO hiding behind the door. He might have witnessed all the havoc. Tearing up at work, that's unprofessional. After the CEO saw my embarrassing moment, I fell down for the rest of the day. That weekend, there was a party for the company's foundation anniversary. Once a year, those with outstanding sales and contributions to the company are honored at the party. The event is meant to boost employee morale and appreciate their efforts. Everyone associated with the company gathers here. Contractors, custodial staff, and the chefs from the cafeteria, all were in attendance. It was set up as a stand-up reception, and everyone was in a relaxed mood that day. I'm not good with glamorous settings and large crowds. Honestly, I just wanted to escape from the party. To make matters worse, my peers were continuously being recognized. One after another, they were called and proudly ascended to the stage, while I merely watched from below. I understand that's just how it is, but it's hard not to feel disheartened. I kept wondering if there's really a place for me in this company. Of course, Mike was honored as the best salesperson. Seeing his proud face made me feel a bit jealous. I tried to blend into the wall, and that's when I noticed Sarah also trying to stay out of sight. "I'm not good with these events," Sarah said with an awkward smile, to which I replied, "Me neither." I could see Mike and some others looking for someone. They were weaving through the janitors, probably looking for Sarah. I gently hid her behind my back. Being petite, she easily disappeared behind my 6'3" frame. "Just stay behind me. Being tall is the only thing I've got going for me." Sarah placed her hand on my back and whispered a soft "thank you," so faintly that only I could hear. She stayed hidden behind me until the CEO finished his speech. Once the party was over, most of the employees headed out for the after party. I was left alone, as usual. It's always the same story. The janitors, cafeteria staff, and contractors remained. Everyone was waiting to take home the flowers from the stage. Sarah seemed to be looking forward to the flowers too. Soon, an event coordinator appeared and prepared the flowers to be taken home. I took a bunch and made a small bouquet. "Here you go, Sarah." As I handed her the bouquet, her face lit up with joy. Seeing her so genuinely happy for the first time made my heart race. I deeply wished I had the right words to tell her how I feel. I was captivated by her smile. Suddenly, the stage spotlight turned on. It became so bright that I had to squint. "Sales department, Benjamin, please come to the stage." A loud voice called my name in a sudden, and I jumped in surprise. "And they're asking me to come up on stage." Confused, I made my way up, and there were all the janitors I always greet. Everyone was smiling cheerfully. As I approached, an older lady began reading out a certificate she had been hiding behind her. "Benjamin, we present you with this award for being the kindest and most wonderful employee in this building." They handed me a handwritten certificate on a regular piece of paper. Where it should have had the CEO's name, there were names of the janitors and other workers. Towards the end, it looked almost like a collection of signatures. It was a lively certificate, and it warmed my heart. I had never received such a heartfelt award before. "Really, for me. Thank you, I'm so touched." I clutched the certificate to my chest with both hands. It felt like everyone's warmth was flowing into me. This is the best award ceremony, isn't it? Suddenly, from the entrance, there was a loud applause and voice. Looking over, to my shock, the CEO was clapping for me. What? The CEO? Whoa. I was too overwhelmed to speak. After all, in my eyes, the CEO was almost a celestial being, not someone who would clap for just me. And he was approaching me saying excellent. I hurriedly stepped down from the stage and bowed to the CEO. It seems like they really admire you. They told me you always greet them early in the morning and help with the cleaning. The CEO said with a kind smile. In my nervousness, I shared something I didn't necessarily need to. I explained to the CEO that my late mother always told me, greeting is a basic human courtesy. I wanted to say it was her teaching, not my merit. The CEO patiently listened to my rambling. I realized how understanding he truly was. After listening to my story, the CEO suddenly got an idea. Benjamin, from tomorrow, you'll be transferring to the secretary's office. I want you to work in a department where you can fully utilize your skills. Stunned by the sudden announcement, all I could say was what? And could I even handle such a responsibility? There's a saying, right person in the right place. I want a secretary with compassion, someone who can understand people's feelings. You're perfect for it. The first to cheer at the CEO's words was Sarah. That's amazing, Benjamin. Congratulations. She was jumping up and down with joy, almost as if she herself had been promoted. Seeing her reaction, even the CEO began to laugh. And then, in a voice no one else could hear, the CEO whispered to me, "You two look good together." So much was happening all at once, and I was struggling to process it all in my head. To add to it, the boss cheekily said, "Let me play matchmaker for you." I replied with confidence, "I'd appreciate it if you did." Seeing me like that, the boss smiled with satisfaction. I wanted to express my deepest gratitude to my late mother. Such a miracle could only have happened because of her teachings. After the CEO left, Sarah ran down from the stage and hugged my arm. Her soft and petite body made my heart race, as if it might burst. A few years later, I wasn't alone anymore. When I finished work and came home, she was there to greet me. Sarah and I got married 2 years after that company's founding anniversary party. I remember the night she first invited me to her apartment. Me at 6 feet 3 inches and she at 4 feet 11 inches. Our height difference did cause some challenges. "Is this okay?" I asked her. She responded with a discontent look, staying silent. What should I do? Her face clearly showed her dissatisfaction with whatever I was doing. "This won't do," Sarah murmured and suddenly jumped onto me. Even though she's light, the sittiness caught me off guard. "Benjamin, a bit more to the right," she struggled atop my back. She was cleaning the top storage space in her room. Even though we decided to move to a new place after getting married, her room was still a mess. Turns out, the reason she had a cleaning job was that she was terrible at tidying up. When I found out, I couldn't help but burst into laughter. Despite it being our first night together, we were both covered in dust, cleaning. I moved right and left, following her directions while she was on my back. We must have looked ridiculous. It was silly, but it made me smile. When we're married, I'll handle the cleaning. Don't waste my efforts. That's how our first night together passed. Now, it's truly a cherished memory. Of course, our matchmaker was the CEO. In gratitude for all he'd done for me, I worked tirelessly and was recognized for my contributions to the company's growth by receiving the CEO's award. I became the first employee outside of the sales department to get an award. It was a moment of pride, knowing that I'd kept the promises I'd made with my mother all these years. Ethan, was at the lowest point in my life. At 26, I married my longtime girlfriend, Alice. Ever since, we've been there for each other. I absolutely loved Alice. She was my reason for living. It's a bit of an exaggeration to say she was my reason for living, but in essence, Alice was everything to me. Alice and I met in college, and we've been together ever since. But the way we met, it's a bit embarrassing. I was head over heels for her from the first sight and went all out, thinking she was the one. At first, Alice was taken aback, but her kindness and understanding only made me fall for her even harder. Eventually, I confessed that I wanted to marry her because she was Alice. Our relationship started quite passionately, but that was just the beginning. I believe Alice and I were doing well. But when I was about 30, Alice was diagnosed with cancer. By the time it was discovered, it had started to spread, and the doctors gave a terminal prognosis. I cried. I felt pathetic. Alice was the one suffering, not me. I tried not to cry in front of her, but she probably knew. She always acted cheerful in front of me, which was incredibly painful to watch. So I did everything I could to support her, to ensure that in the time she had left, she'd say she lived happily. We went on trips, and she ate her favorite foods every day. Rather than suffering for a long time, she wanted to live her life her way. Because that was Alice's wish. We laughed a lot and had fun. Thanks to that, Alice lived longer than the doctors had predicted. Ethan is kind of lonely, right? That's why I want to keep some memories. By doing that, you can remember the good times, laugh, and not feel lonely, don't you think? Alice always thought of me and departed for heaven with a smile on her face. For me, it felt like the world was ending. I tried to act strong in front of Alice, but when I was alone, I was just lost. Before I realized it, my house was a mess, and all I did was either stay at home or commute to work. Nothing was fun, and I couldn't find a reason to laugh. Every day, I felt like everything in life was over. But then, a turning point came into my life. It was a month after Alice had passed away. When I checked the mailbox after work, there was a letter from Alice. I was shocked. I hurriedly opened the envelope, and there were words written in Alice's handwriting. This letter is something I asked my parents to send after I am gone. If you're reading this, it means I'm no longer by your side, knowing you without me around. Your room is probably a mess, and you're likely feeling down, aren't you? Thinking that, here's a surprise from me. A gift certificate for a stay at a spa resort. I secretly bought it. Use this to take a little break and refresh yourself. Oh, and you better use it. If you don't share a photo from the trip with me, I'll haunt you by her bedside. The letter held Alice's thoughts and feelings. Alice had been thinking about what would become of me after she was gone. That's why she prepared such a thing for me. Alice, touched by her kindness, tears welled up in my eyes. There's no way to thank or repay her now. The thought makes tears flow uncontrollably. Sniffling, I open another piece of letter. However, instead of a letter filled with words, in the center of the paper it read, "Being by your side made me so happy. Thank you for enriching my life, filling it with love. I love you so much, Ethan." The stationery was slightly crumpled, with visible tear stains. I couldn't help but cry. Crying and crying and crying. The one who should be thanking is me. Alice, thank you for loving me and being with me. I want to see you again. While being gently rocked by the bus's movement, I gazed at the lush mountainous landscape. Today, I took a day off to head to the trip Alice gifted me. Honestly, I wasn't too enthusiastic, but Alice was looking forward to the pictures. I was being carried by the bus, thinking of how much Alice loved nature. She was passionate about traveling, especially places rich in nature. Even after her terminal diagnosis, she whimsically said she wanted to forest bathe. I rarely went to places rich in nature like mountains or rivers. I might have gone on school trips, and that's about it. I once wondered, looking at trees, what's so fun about it? But after being with Alice and experiencing nature, I was touched by the earth's bounty and the beauty of nature. It's a view you can't find in the city. There's a sense of escapism, and before I knew it, I too began to appreciate nature. While much of the view from the bus is shades of brown and green, occasionally rivers and campsites come into view. Speaking of which, Alice and I went camping often. When she first suggested camping, gathering the gear and all was a bit of a hassle, but it was fun. Struggling to light a fire, overcooking the barbecue, getting overly excited over small things and laughing together. Watching the flowing forest landscape, tears unknowingly flowed. Every time I remember Alice, there's an overwhelming sadness that pierces my heart. It's unbearably painful. Silently, I wept. Please, let me cry. I'm not strong enough to recover so quickly. Excuse me, are you okay? I was just quietly shedding tears, but the woman sitting across the aisle from me reached out with concern. I'm sorry, I'm fine, really. As I tried to nod in acknowledgement, I found myself frozen in place. The woman before me was breathtakingly beautiful. The long-haired woman, noticing my stunned expression, tilted her head and asked, is there something on my face? Snapping back to reality and wiping my tears, I hastily replied, sorry, you just remind me of someone I know. It wasn't just her beauty that caught me off guard. She was undoubtedly gorgeous, but I was struck by a kind of hazy feeling, like we'd met somewhere before, but I couldn't remember where. Where was it? Darn, I can't remember. As I was deep in thought, the woman made a slightly disappointed face and chuckled. Figures, right? She then mumbled something to herself, which I couldn't quite make out. Did I say something odd? Seeing her slightly forlorn profile, I instinctively tried to change the topic. Thank you for talking to me. It helped me pull myself together. It seemed like she was traveling alone, and if I continued to dwell on Alice, I'd end up ruining the trip she had planned for me. Maybe that's why I attempted to start a conversation. She looked surprised but responded with a gentle smile. I just thought it was a shame for such a handsome face to look so down. Are you traveling alone? The woman introduced herself as Meyer and mentioned she was staying at the same hotel for work. As I introduced myself and mentioned that this trip was a gift from my late wife, she responded, she must have been a wonderful woman. It's only natural to grieve when someone like her is gone. I thought she was truly a kind-hearted person, one who could genuinely connect with others. We still have some time before the bus arrives. Would you mind sharing some memories of your wife with me? Oh, I'm sorry. If it's too painful, you don't have to. It's just, I grew up in an institution and have always been single, so I've never really known the warmth of a family. Maya looked at me with a hint of envy, although she seemed just a bit younger than me. She had a certain youthful innocence about her. Her words made me wonder if she had grown up starved of affection. They were so deeply sad and heavy. If you're okay hearing my stories, I've got plenty. With that, I began sharing the joyful memories I had with Alice. You two must have been a very close couple. Thank you for sharing that with me. Maya replied with a warm smile. She listened to my story till the end, and it felt like, after a long time, I had shared my memories with someone, which made my heart feel lighter. Ever since Alice passed away, I've been keeping to myself and haven't really talked to many people. But precisely because of that, I couldn't quite recall where I had met Maya before, and it was bothering me. While talking, I hoped I would remember, but sadly, I couldn't. It felt like a fishbone stuck in my throat, and the discomfort must have shown on my face. Maya looked puzzled and asked, "Is everything all right? You seem to be deep in thought." I gave her a smile. I didn't think it was that obvious. "Well, I feel like I've met you somewhere before, but I just can't put my finger on it." "Oh, I get it. It's frustrating when you can't remember something." She laughed, then added, "Let me help you clear that up," handing me a piece of paper. Was this an admission ticket? "Actually, that inn has a small studio in its annex. Come check it out," she said with a smile, and at that moment, the bus came to a stop. After getting off the bus, I headed to the inn and had a pretty good time on my vacation. Though I wasn't really in the mood, chatting with Maya did lighten my spirits, and the thought of having a story to share with Alice cheered me up a bit. And I was curious about the studio Maya mentioned. This place, although an inn, apparently holds regular concert. At first, I wondered why an inn would have a studio, but it made sense given the musical events. Maya had mentioned that if I visited the studio, I'd understand the reason for my uneasiness. I guess I had to check it out. So, after enjoying the hot springs, I headed to the studio. And the sight I was met with was Maya in a dress, playing the guitar. Seeing her brought back a particular memory. Back when Alice was still with us. We often went to amusement parks for our dates. Camping was a bit expensive for us, so we usually opted for movies or parks. On one such day, "Look over there, they're holding some event." There was a performance on a stage at a small amusement park. A woman stood alone on the vast stage, holding a guitar. But there was hardly anyone watching. It was a weekday, so the low turnout was understandable. Without letting such things bother her, she began singing as she played the guitar. Her voice was incredibly clear and beautiful. As the music flowed, more and more people gathered around. Alice was deeply moved too. "She's amazing. I'd love to hear her play again." I remember her saying that. "Ah, now I get it. The performer that day was Maya." It was a long time ago, so I barely remembered her face, but the sound of her voice and the guitar was unforgettable. The knot in my throat loosened, and as Maya said, I felt a lot better. Her performance was so refreshing that it rejuvenated me. Come to think of it, when we heard Maya's performance back then, Alice and I had just started dating. The sweet and sour memories of those early days came flooding back. Meeting Maya today, here, felt like a gift from Alice. Alice sure had a way of sending surprises from afar. Thanks, Alice. Listening to Maya's song and reminiscing about Alice, strangely, there's no pain in my heart. Maya's song seemed to wash away my pain, allowing me to genuinely touch upon my memories of Alice for the first time in a while. After the performance, there was an opportunity for fans to shake hands with her. She seemed to have a good number of fans, all of them shining with excitement as they met her. As for me, I didn't have the courage to join in on the handshake session, so instead, I left a thank you note in a box for fan letters. It read, "Thanks to you, I remembered so many memories with my wife. But since then, I haven't seen her again. It's only natural, I suppose. She has fans, after all. I'm not someone who can just casually approach her." That's what I thought, and since I was traveling alone and the inn was pretty vast, the odds of bumping into her were slim. I probably won't see her again. Typically, crossing paths with someone by fate is a rare event. Once-in-a-lifetime encounters, you could say. That's the real charm of a journey. But then, surprisingly, never would have imagined meeting you on a blind date. I was shocked too, haha. 2 years later, I ran into Maya. And it was on a blind date. Because she had cut her long hair for her blind date photo, I didn't recognize her at first. By the way, the blind date was pretty much forced upon me by a friend. Rather, I was tricked into coming here. At first, my friend told me, "There's a beautiful woman. She's still young. You should start over," but unfortunately, I wasn't considering remarriage. I vaguely declined when the topic seemed to lean towards a blind date, but then I was invited to a casual get-together. Unlike a formal blind date, there's an easy way out of a social gathering, and I felt bad constantly turning down my friends' invitations. So I thought, just this once, but when I accepted the invite, I was completely set up. He'll pay for this later. But when I found out the other person was Maya, things felt different. With her, I actually wanted to chat a bit. "I thought you're a celebrity, Maya. I assumed you'd have tons of people wanting to date you." "Well, I don't really have that many fans. It's just that my mentor is quite famous, and people come to see me because of their name. Besides, I don't really see myself marrying a fan." It seemed like she was incredibly popular at that concert, but apparently, it just looked that way because I'm not in the know. Filling up that small studio doesn't make one famous. Moreover, Maya's main job isn't singing. She does it as a hobby. With such a beautiful voice, I honestly thought it was a waste she wasn't singing professionally. But according to Maya, it's just a hobby, so I can do it freely and enjoy it without any pressure. Guess there's something to be said about the pressures that come with going professional. Different strokes for different folks. Through these conversations, Maya and I grew closer. Turns out, our connection was destiny. We began dating and, before we knew it, a year had flown by. We clicked in many ways. We rarely fought, and our relationship was smooth. Perhaps our compatibility was spot on, or maybe it was all thanks to Alice. I felt as though Alice nudged me towards Maya. I was genuinely keen on pursuing a relationship with Maya. But I did wonder, was I good enough being a divorcee? When I voiced that concern, she firmly told me, "It doesn't matter. I want to be with you, Ethan." Hearing her say that made me really want to be with Maya forever. Of course, I hadn't forgotten about Alice. I never could. But if I keep living in the past, I feel like Alice would scold me. She'd probably tell me to pull myself together. So, I decided to move forward. "Will you marry me?" My second marriage proposal in life. I knelt before Maya, presenting a small ring and flowers. She broke into a big smile, joyfully saying, "I'd love to," as she accepted the ring. It felt incredible. I never want to experience that depth of sorrow again. Since Maya knew about Alice and my past, we get regular checkups together. Early detection increases the chances of a cure after all. And we didn't have a wedding ceremony. It was Maya's wish. "Your wedding with Alice is a precious memory. I wouldn't want to overwrite that." She was so considerate. However, every girl dreams of a wedding ceremony. So, as a small gesture, I surprised her with a photo shoot in wedding attire. She was absolutely thrilled, saying, "This will be a memory to cherish forever." Seeing Maya in that dress with a radiant smile, she looked truly happy. Just watching her filled my heart. "Hey Alice, if I told you I got remarried, would you be mad at me?" "No, knowing you, if I ever made Maya cry, you'd probably haunt my dreams scolding. Don't make your wife cry." The bond between Maya and me, somehow connected by Alice. I'll cherish this bond forever. So, everything's fine now. Sorry for causing so much worry. Thanks to Alice, I managed to move on. I intend to do for Maya all that I couldn't for Alice. That, I believe, would be my way of repaying both Maya for coming into my life, and Alice